Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to the update for networking from all things Cisco Live US 2025. If you attended Cisco Live, this may be a good review. It's probably going to be a little bit of a condensed version of everything that you've seen. You can't quite fit 4 days of content into 55 minutes, but we're going to try. There's a lot here, so feel free to ask questions in the chat. We'll get to them hopefully at the end, or Eric and team, if you guys see anything that's pertinent, immediately let me know. But we'll roll through this pretty quick. If it's anything that you need to deep dive on or want more information on at the end, let us know, let your SEs know, let your account team know, reach out to me, whatever you guys feel most comfortable doing. But this is going to be very high level. So as maybe you can assume, AI is a big topic of conversation these days, and it was a large topic of conversation at Cisco Live this year as well. So a lot of the announcements that we made are very focused around AI, how we are as Cisco using AI in multiple facets of IT. So Cisco's in a very unique situation. I think the way I heard it summarized best is we provide networking for AI and we provide AI for networking. So we kind of approach it both ways, right? We're going to give you the network that allows you to use AI in your business and your day-to-day. And then we're also going to use AI to help you manage that network, right? Data centers, obviously huge for AI workloads. And then we obviously need to consume that workload in your workplaces, however you are, however your users are connecting to your network. And then obviously bring it all together so we're secure. And all of that we are leveraging AI for. Just a quick summary of all of the announcements that were made at Cisco Live. You don't have to remember this, but it was a lot. We been at Cisco for 11 years, and I was a customer for many, many years prior to that. And I don't remember another Cisco Live that we announced so much stuff. And I hesitate to use the word cool, but a lot of this is really cool. So let's get into it. We're going to focus on the network. Again, there's a lot of other announcements out there from Cisco Live for other technologies, security, data center, collaboration, et cetera. Today, we're going to focus on the network specifically. But ultimately, it comes down to, is your network AI ready? Are you ready for the traffic increases? Are you ready for the increased security footprint that the additional workloads and AI agents bring to the table? And then obviously these networks become more complex, right? Because we have way more stuff going across the network. And it's expected to have not just the public AI agents, but all of the private AI agents that are being developed internally for your private use cases, right? They're getting added to your network that have never been there before. AI is now a huge piece of attacks and malicious behavior around the world. It's extremely easy to use AI in malicious ways to gain access to your network, to leverage vulnerabilities and that kind of thing. And then because we have such a significantly more complex environment, the skill set and the people we need to run these networks, for some reason, is not getting bigger. It's actually decreasing. So we have a shortage of skill set in the IT world. So we're here to try to help with that problem. So shortage of skill set in the world of operations. There's a traditional way of doing things typically, right? You have your help desk levels all the way up through your senior engineering levels. And the processes that we went through to take a reported problem, whether it was something that our monitoring systems caught or if it was something that users reported, there was a significant process that we would take to find those issues, triage them, troubleshoot them, and ultimately come to resolution. And with that shortage of skill set in our environment and the increase in technology and complexity in those environments, that's going to be a problem, right? So AI can help us there. At Cisco Live, if you were there, agentic ops, it was not a foreign concept. But if you weren't at Cisco Live, agentic ops is basically our ability to use AI to both correlate information across domains, which is networking, potentially applications, all the way up through the stack, using custom-built language models and learning models. So think AI specifically built for networking, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then being able to automate some of these tasks, right? We don't necessarily want AI to go make, say, changes to our network without us knowing, right? But we may want AI to give us suggestions or say, hey, this is how we would, AI would solve the problem. Do you want to do this? And it may take a whole step out of the troubleshooting and ops process. So the way we're doing this, AI Assistant number one. AI Assistant is our basically our assistant that's built into all of our products. Currently in Cloud Networking Dashboard, Meraki Dashboard, the Cisco Security Cloud, as well as Splunk. It will be added to things like Catalyst Center in the future, not too distant future, and then across the board, right? Pair that with what we're calling AI Canvas, and that allows us to put all of these pieces together and basically collaborate between these domains. Historically, networking is in a silo, security is in a silo, operations sometimes is in a silo, and like the first level help desk is in a silo. How do we make all of that come together? And our answer to that is AI Canvas. All of this is backed by what we're calling our deep network model. So we have all of these large language models. You can see the ones listed here that are pretty common. We've built our own, and we've trained it based on Cisco being a network company, 40 years of Cisco networking experience. And we've pulled information from previous TAC cases, CCIE input, and all of the information we have about our customers' networks, and trained this model to be very specifically network centric. So think of it as a CCIE AI model, right? You now have access to CCIE level information at your fingertips. So AI Canvas. This is, looks like a dashboard. We're all kind of familiar with seeing things on a screen with charts and lines and stuff like that. But this is way more than that because it's dynamic, and it's also collaborative. So we can take a specific situation. So in this case, we actually have a ticket that was created through ServiceNow. We brought it into AI Canvas, and somebody started doing some troubleshooting. They say, hey, we've got a problem with an application. It's slow out in this particular location in California, right? So in this case, we have some graphs here. We see that our performance out of our internet gateway has started to degrade. We see some packet loss. We see we've brought in, and those are sources. They're coming from Meraki Dashboard through the cloud. We also see this other source over there from Thousand Eyes. So we see on the edge of our network, we're also seeing that packet loss, right? So what happens is this ticket was created with the information in it. We've immediately started to triage this. And now what we can do is continue the process. We can actually type in here and say, hey, let's take a look. What's the application performance related to the network performance? And we'll go through the process of saying, hey, okay, we see a correlation here. We see a degradation in performance for this particular application, by the way, coming from Splunk, that relates to and correlates to this problem in our ability to access that application. Cool. So now we have that level of information. What we can then do is further this process that we would typically go through and say, hey, let's analyze where this problem is. So using Thousand Eyes, let's look at that packet trace. Let's look and see where in that trace and where in that flow of packets we see the problem in our network. And we're going to identify that actually this is actually inside our network somewhere. This is not across the internet. So in that case, we can say, okay, let's AI, what do you think is the best way to track this problem? And they say, hey, let's add QoS policy. So we add QoS policy that says prioritize this financial application and then monitor it. So AI has now been monitoring it, and we see that the performance has improved since we made that QoS change to the egress point of our network. Now, if we want to include other people in this, we can do that as well. So we can bring in our network operations team or security team. Heck, we can share this with the CEO if we want, right? And we can say, hey, invite these people to our fun space of trying to solve this problem. And now anybody who has that link can join and see what has gone on in the troubleshooting process. And not only that, at the end of this process, once we've solved the problem, at the top of that top of that page, you can see generate report. We can click that button and generate an RCA based on everything we did to solve that problem. So that's AI Canvas in a nutshell. That's something that's coming in the fall in limited release, and hopefully we'll see it sometime early next year as something that you guys can take advantage of. We'll be building other things into this as well. The security product suite will be built in. Right now we are doing Rocky Dashboard, Thousand Eyes, and Splunk. So more to come there.
The only thing I would like to add to that is like, think about the time savings and not building dashboards. Like building dashboards can take so much time. It being able to find that relevant information and to build the dashboard on that is a huge win.
Yeah, everything here is dynamically generated. That's the cool part, right? None of this is, I forgot to create a chart for this problem that I'm having. Like, it's all coming from data that we're getting from all of the applications and all of the network just by virtue of having it in our platform, right? So
I like the idea behind the war room concept there as well. Like when things are going downhill, you need to get a bunch of teams on the line, and everybody is an operator of their own silo. When you're able to present that information to the whole team, it helps that team consume what you're seeing and then gives them the ability to throw in their information, and just makes things really visible for the ecosystem that's trying to troubleshoot that problem. That's pretty slick.
The amount of time that saves of emails between different organizations within an organization is huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was about to say that hot take, I love ServiceNow, and the fact that you're able to upload all of that into ServiceNow automatically is also a huge win.
For sure. Yeah, and the other way around too, where we're taking that information from the initial ServiceNow case, right? All right. So that's AI Canvas. But what brings that to the forefront is the AI assistant, right? How do we leverage AI to help our network do things more efficiently? How do we manage things more efficiently? So AI assistant here to do that too. So, in the old days, we'd have to write up a change process. We'd have to write up all the configuration changes we're going to push out to devices if we wanted to push out a change. Within Dashboard now, using AI assistant, we have this concept of automation. So we can say, hey, I want to automate something that used to take multiple clicks or multiple API calls. Scripting. I don't have to do scripting anymore if I want to automate a process. We've built it into the dashboard. So hey, in this case, we want to add a switch to the network and copy all the configurations from another switch that's in there. Cool. Let AI system do that for you. It will figure out exactly what you're trying to do based on your prompts to it, and then run through the automation process to do that. So super powerful. And you don't have to use AI assistant to do that. By the way, you can write all of your own automations, but AI assistant can leverage that and actually make changes to your network with your permission for you. All right. So we need a network to run the AI, right? And the way we want to do that is to ultimately make sure that the technology that we're delivering at the edge of our network, in the core of our network, and the users of our network are ready to be operationally simplistic, basically everything we just saw, scalable, so that we can actually push all that traffic through the network that we're talking about, and then make sure they're secure, right? With AI, the reason AI is here is because compute has become so much more powerful, right? And we need to be ready for that. And we'll talk about security and post-quantum computing here in a minute. But operational simplicity, we saw how we're doing that with AI System and AI Canvas. But the way we're actually doing that, right, is we have to have things in a platform. We have to have our networking infrastructure in a single place. And it has to be unified. Historically, we've had Catalyst. Historically, we've had Meraki, on-prem, cloud. Two different hardware platforms, two different licensing models, two different everything. What we're doing now is we're bringing this together. It's all going to be one common platform from a management perspective, a licensing perspective, and a hardware perspective. You can choose whether you want to be on-prem, you want to be in the cloud, but in the end, it doesn't matter. We're going to provide the same level of service to you. And we've already started this. This is happening right now. In Dashboard looks like Catalyst Center. Catalyst Center looks like Dashboard. We're providing more and more functionality, commonalities between the two. And we'll talk about hardware and availability in that platform in a minute. But we're also introducing all of these automation and assurance features in both places, right? So again, doesn't matter how you want to consume it, but we have the options for you to do that. The cool thing about the cloud architecture, and you're going to see a ton of information in Cisco Live about cloud, is our ability to iterate on these things very quickly. Everything we're talking about from an AI perspective, from an automation perspective, is showing up in our SaaS offerings first. It's showing up in Dashboard. It's showing up in Secure Cloud Control. It's showing up in Splunk. It's showing up in Thousand Eyes. That's where that's happening. It's coming to all the on-prem platforms, but just know that the SaaS platforms are getting all of this quicker because we can iterate on it faster. To that end, things that maybe we didn't have available to the cloud managed networks in the past, we have and are continuing to iterate on. So near and dear to my heart, if we start managing a switch in Dashboard, in the cloud, in Cisco Networking Cloud, I can still use the CLI, right? That's game changing. If I can run show commands, if I can see things that are going on in that switch, even though I'm managing it and my configuration source is my cloud, that's huge for troubleshooting and just peace of mind if you're not totally cool with letting the cloud take over, right? We're adding features, things like BGP, VRFs, in-service software updates, being able to do stack-wise virtual, and then even cooler, I hesitate to use that word, but it's really freaking cool that we can actually start doing fabric deployments in the cloud, right? This is coming, and we can do micro-segmentation, macro-segmentation, VXLAN. It simplifies the entire process, all without needing any on-prem infrastructure other than your switching and wireless infrastructures.
Yeah, I think this is huge for teams that have been trying to get to that point, but they just don't have the manpower or their implementation debt, and they just need that extra like boost. It's like good to be able to have these tools because they like everybody knows what they want, like what the end goal is, but it's just so many steps to get there.
Absolutely, and it's complex, right? It's a lot of configuration that has to go into that, and a lot of thought that has to go into it. And if we can abstract that a little bit and just make it that much easier to deploy, why not? And this is coming to all of our networking platforms. We've been here for wireless for a while. We're going to see some enhancements here in a bit on how we can enhance our wireless deployments through the cloud. Switching, again, been here for quite a while. We're expanding that not only to the existing Catalyst switching portfolio, 9300s, 9200s, 9500s, but as we'll see in a minute, the new generation of Cisco switching, and then routing as well. So the next gen routers that we'll talk about very shortly will be also cloud native. And this is all done by having the cloud native connectors built into iOS XE. So no longer do we have two platforms. No longer do we have two management interfaces. We bring it all together with iOS XE that we all know and love. Assurance is one of those things that is also near and dear to my heart. Being able to look at a specific user in a network, for example, and be able to see what's going on with that user, right? Is that user having layer 2 problems connecting to an access point? Are we having roaming problems? Is the problem really an application upstream? Rarely have you ever been able to look in a single place and find that information. But with Assurance now, we can actually pull up a user. The CEO calls us and says, hey, I'm having this problem. Oh yeah, look at that. You're actually not getting to the application across the internet because of X, Y, and Z problem, right? We can see that in one singular place. If they're having roaming problems, we can see that in a singular place. We can go back in history. So if you look at this area up here, you'll see that those little X's are problems. They're situations or incidents that happen to that user. We can click on that and actually take this back in time and look at this user's experience at that point in time, right? No more going through logs, no more going through debugs to try to find the problem, or not being able to find a problem because we didn't have the right logging turned on. It's all here and being done for you. And then add AI assistant to this, where we can say, hey, AI assistant, what was wrong with this user? And get a very clean, easy RCA to that problem. It's game changing. And by the way, that can happen from the help desk, right? CEO calls the help desk, CEO's assistant has access. They can do all of this themselves without escalating to senior network engineers. Part of this is all going to be cross architecture, Thousand Eyes. We actually now have deep visibility into cloud providers, Azure, AWS. We no longer have this demarcation point of public internet cloud. We can actually see what's going on inside of those public clouds. So instead of saying, hey, now we got to turn this over to the Azure team, network now sees what's going on. Same thing with Splunk. The integrations with Thousand Eyes and Splunk are just amazing, because now we have the power of this this database of information coming from Splunk and being able to correlate it to the network. That's amazing. All right, so that's all of the big AI stuff. So let's talk about all the devices that are going to enable that for us, right? We have we've innovated on our silicon. So again, what brings Cisco to the table is custom silicon. We know networking. We've been doing it for a long time. iOS XE is super mature. We've built upon that again over years, and we've built it for our silicon, our ASICs. And then now the platform, or the things that we're doing to integrate all of this together and be able to bring this visibility to you, right, is going to help. So switching. Let's start with switching. The two big switching announcements at Cisco Live, the Cisco 9350 and the Cisco 9610 switch. The 9350 looks like your traditional stackable switch, next generation. Very different in a lot of ways, but very similar in operation, the way you're used to seeing it, right? But the cool thing about these is they will be natively lower energy usage. They use all of our new Silicon One ASICs. We can dig into that at any point if anybody's interested. That's a really cool rabbit hole to go down. Post quantum secure, we'll talk about that in a sec. And then just increased bandwidth, right? These switches, I was excited about 720 gig on the Catalyst 6500s. If anybody's been around for a while, this blows that out of the water, right? And again, out of the box, you have the option of how you want to consume this. They were a native cloud. They are native on-prem. So out of the box, you choose how you would like to manage these devices. And the really cool thing is, if you don't want to go full cloud, we can handle that too. You can say, hey, I want to manage this switch the way I've always wanted it, but I want that visibility. I want that information. I want to be able to use the AI canvas. I want to get all of that information into dashboard to be able to leverage that operational simplicity. We can do that too. So 9350 looks like a Cat 9K, is a Cat 9K, but we're not calling it a Cat 9K anymore. It's a Cisco C9350, just to make sure everybody's aware of that. You'll notice a few differences. The front looks pretty much the same and is in a lot of ways, with the exception of the availability of ports and things like that. Configuration options are going to be, anything that you could possibly imagine. Up to 48 ports of 10 gig MGig, up to 90 watts, 48 ports of 90 watt PoE, right? Enhanced FSU, basically our field service upgrade capability to do almost hitless software updates. Stack power is being improved significantly. I'll talk about that in a little bit in a second here. Stacking, we can stack up to 12 switches now instead of 8, and everything else that's on this slide. Like we could go into spend an hour talking about these switches, but just know that they are. Also, you'll notice, just for the people who care about these kinds of things, there's 3 power supplies in the back. The stacking cables are improved. In fact, stacking's been improved. We're no longer using a ring-based topology. We're using a VXLAN-based topology. None of that matters to you, but it's interesting stuff. And then from a smart building perspective, having that 90 watts of PoE potentially in every switch is huge. Stacking's much easier. We can actually do things like if we have power stack. So power stack was always really cool. But now with power stack, if we don't need a certain power supply, or if we don't need a certain number of power supplies in order to provide the same power to that switch, we can actually turn them off, which is really cool. We have more insight into how our power is being used. So we can turn things off, lower the power that we're consuming based on usage of PoE devices. And we can all track that through an energy management dashboard. So, if we have PoE lighting, if we have PoE enabled devices, cameras, machinery that, it matters how much power we're using, we can actually track all of that now too. And then just in case you're curious, we actually have, we can do 100 gig uplinks on all these switches now. So if you have the workloads, if you have the AI users who need to push that amount of data, we can handle that. So 10 gig access ports, 100 gig uplink ports. Now, when we talk 100 gig uplink ports, that's pretty crazy. We probably need something that's going to be able to handle that density or that much throughput, right? Enter the 9610. So the C9610 is the big bad chassis switch, 10 slot, dual soups. Sometimes it boggles my mind. 25.6 terabits per second across the backplane. Hard to imagine. And leverages the latest ASICs that we've offered. Port density is off the charts, up to 400 gig ports on the line cards. But to that point that I made earlier, 100 gig down to the access layer, we can support that level of density.
That's pretty cool. Those supervisors are big too. Those are not standard 1U supervisors.
They're not. No, they're 2U, I believe, on those soups. And actually, that's a good call out, Tim, because the way we've architected this switch is it's now a front to back airflow. We don't have, you'll notice there's no fan tray on the left. So we actually have an additional width on these cards that we can add additional density to. They're also a little taller. So per card, we actually get higher density purely because of the physics of how we designed the chassis.
It's funny you mentioned that, because as I'm looking at like the other slots, like 1, 2, 3, 4, those look like they're larger. They look like they're larger line cards, like in height.
They are larger line cards in height. In fact, you'll notice here that we can actually take some of the old CAT 9600 cards and bring them into the chassis. But in order to do that, we need this adapter. We actually need to make that card physically bigger to fit in those slots. So yes, it is bigger.
Very cool.
Yeah, very, very cool. All right. So let's talk security. All for you.
Jamie, just so you know, we're at the halfway mark.
All right, cool. This is actually going well, time-wise. We're doing all right. So we talked about post-quantum computing. We have to make sure that not only are our switches secure, but we also want to make sure our networks and the traffic that's passing through it is secure. And then ultimately we want to secure our users and clients and applications, right? But when we talk post-quantum computing, PQC, basically that means what happens when I have compute that can effectively decrypt anything that's flowing through the network, right? Instantly, almost, right? Without having to think about it. We want to make sure we're encrypting the traffic in flight so nothing can see it, and also is not going to be decryptable by this quantum computing that is not that far off. We're doing that through higher encryption using things like MACsec on the wire, as well as what we call that post-quantum piece of it is what happens when we have this traffic that either is or was captured on the network. that is archived somewhere and available to somebody to then future decrypt once they have the ability to do this in a much more scalable way. So we would need to be careful about that. So what we're doing from the switching perspective, and this actually flows across the rest of the product lines as well, we're actually hardening our microcode and bootloaders and the operating system. So if in the event that somebody does get access to the switch, cannot modify it and potentially insert something into there that would be in the middle of traffic flowing through it. In addition to being able to do things like MACsec and high level IPsec encryption across the data plane. So the next piece, so we talked switching, let's talk routers. So I didn't talk too much about smart switching. They were called Cisco smart switches, the 9350s and the 9610s. We call them smart switches because they're going to be able to do things like actually be part of that security chain. We can actually run security stacks on those switches in the future when we're ready to do that. Now we're calling the Cisco secure routers. So the next generation of Cisco routers are the C8000 series routers. These routers are, again, post-quantum secure, way more throughput than we've had historically on the same platform. Integrated firewalls and SASE connectivity, so fully integrated NGFWs at the edge of your network and providing all of the same routing functionality that you're used to. Direct integration with Thousand Eyes, being able to feed all of those analytics up to management platform of choice, as well as be able to use the AI tools that we've already talked about. Cloud management, fully native iOS XE management through dashboard. You're sensing a trend here. We've done wireless, we've done switching, now we're doing routing, right? Fully managed.
Another great use case for this is going to be those branch locations where you want to have your router, you want to have your SD-WAN, and you want to have your firewall, and you don't necessarily want 3 boxes.
Correct.
And being able to manage that in dashboard. So I think that's a great use case.
Yep. As well as simplified licensing. So we've simplified licensing across the switching and the wireless portfolio. Same deal with switches, routers. And here's just an overview of the portfolio. We can dig into this at any point in time. But again, I'll bring up that single dashboard for cloud management. Obviously, we can do all of your secure routing, switching, wireless, and sensors in the cloud. Also choose to do routing using SD-WAN Manager, as well as Catalyst Center, if you so choose. So the options are there for you. However, if you do choose to bring that into dashboard with fully managed iOS XE, we're going to bring those features to you that you expect, right? It's a fully, it's a full Cisco router leveraging the full iOS XE feature set, manageable in the cloud. And you choose. So again, we're going to have this also ability to do this hybrid mode where we have a router that you're managing, maybe traditionally using the CLI, using Ansible, using Netconf, however you're using that, managing those devices, but also bring that telemetry, bring that information into dashboard, into the cloud, into AI for that analytics, right? And then the ability to use security cloud control as that security management layer. So let the router route, let security do security, right? And have that common security policy across the entire organization, regardless of it's a firewall, an MX in dashboard currently, or a new Cisco 8000 router. Cool. All right, Wi-Fi. We've had Wi-Fi 7 for quite a while now. We've launched our first Wi-Fi 7 AP back in December of last year. We've added to the portfolio since then. We have everything down from a 9172, which is sort of a lower end total 6 spatial stream access point, all the way up to the 9178, which is the big bad 16 spatial streams of Wi-Fi 7, dual 10 gig interfaces, lots of other features. We're adding the 9179F to this portfolio, and this is an interesting one. Not everybody's going to have a use case for this, but it's our large venue, stadium, public space, indoor, outdoor access point. Historically, we've accomplished this with external antennas, different mounting situations, different access points that support these antennas, professional installations, things along those lines. It's been not hard. We've been able to do it, but there's costs to mounting multiple things and doing that. So enter the 9179F, which I'll say it. The BU, the business tells me that stands for fantastic. I think it stands for flexible, but who am I? But it is flexible because it does allow us to put this access point either indoors or outdoors. So if we have a large auditorium, a large conference space, a large gathering space, it can be deployed indoors with Wi-Fi 7 with 6 gigahertz using low power mode, which is required for, which is an indoor deployment of Wi-Fi 6. Or it can be used outdoors. So it can be deployed in stadiums, in large open areas outside, think college quads or something along those lines, right? We need to provide good access, good Wi-Fi coverage to an area where we can't put an access point in some cases. And apparently I had duplicate slides in there. There we go. So it's the same access point, whether you want to deploy it indoors or outdoors. They look exactly the same. The difference is the environmental pack. So we add this environmental pack onto the outdoor model. It now becomes an outdoor access point. And if you know anything about the way Wi-Fi 6 works, 6 gigahertz works, and the regulatory requirements for putting these devices outside, this makes all the difference in the world. But it truly is a indoor or outdoor access point, and this satisfies those requirements. The other really cool thing about this access point is that it allows us to electrically change the antenna characteristics, which, if you're not a Wi-Fi nerd like me, this is really, really cool. It's something we've never been able to do. This is showing it to you how we would make this change in dashboard, but it allows us to choose from three different coverage patterns. One's called bore sight, which is a very directional pattern. All of the radios are pointing out the front of that access point, and we're covering at a 70 by 70 beam width. We also have this wide concept where we will have a different beam width for different frequencies. So we'll have 5 gigahertz pointing in one direction, 5 gigahertz pointing in another direction, and then 2.4 and 6 covering the entire swath. Then we also have this concept of front and back, which is kind of cool, which I'll talk about in just a sec. But just as perspective, you can see on the left-hand side here, this is what a traditional deployment would look like in a high density or stadium environment. And then we have, whoops, too many buttons. We have this guy over here, which is the new 9179. You can see immediately that it's 3 times less. It's 2 things that we mount less than we did before, right? Just mount the access point. It's all built in. And then we also have this front back mode, which is pretty nifty because we can actually point this access point in one direction, but also cover clients underneath of it, which historically would not have been able to be covered using those external antenna options. So,
it seems that it's such a huge thing. Having that bottom.
It's surprisingly small. I wish I had the video of the product manager holding up the old one and holding up the new one, because it's amazingly small. But the idea is flexibility, right? We can do a lot of things with this access point, and it's not just for big stadiums and things like that. And we can even add other antennas that we are used to using on our access points to it. So if we want to have this front back configuration using directional antennas, we can do the same thing. Again, a little bit of a niche use case, but super exciting for those wireless nerds in the house. And then lastly, from a wireless front, we introduced what we're calling the campus gateway. This is what's going to allow us to cover some use cases that we've had maybe with an on-prem controller-based deployment, but also in the cloud. So let's just bring that management plane to the cloud for the access points, but the data plane we can concentrate onto the controller still. We've never been able to do that really with a cloud-managed wireless deployment. We've traditionally had the controller-based deployments using local mode, which is where we tunnel all of the traffic back to a centralized controller. But that management was still on-prem using the controller, including things like Catalyst Center. And again, we can take that control plane, move it up to the cloud for easy deployment, but also give us the ability to flexibly terminate those sessions and those tunnels to a singular place. Super helpful for campuses, again, stadiums where we need to have seamless roaming, or conference centers where we need to have seamless roaming throughout the environment. We don't have to manage these massive broadcast domains anymore. where we might have traditionally in a cloud deployment. Also, we can scale. This is if you're not familiar, we've actually increased the scale of the cloud dashboard platform to be able to handle this. So we can now do up to 5,000 access points per network with up to 50,000 clients per deployment. Also, this does not require a license. So you add this to dashboard as long as you have access points that are licensed. This is licensed. And again, helps us solve our use cases, right? Traditionally, we had the local mode or Flex Connect options locally managed. We could potentially bring that locally managed deployment into cloud in that monitoring mode or hybrid mode. Now we can solve both of those use cases in a cloud managed capacity using the campus gateway or traditional layer 2 bridging on the cloud managed access points.
In the campus gateway, like the VXLAN that it utilizes, do you have to configure that at all?
No, it's all behind the scenes. It's just like CapWAP used to work. So to that end, we're not using CapWAP on there. There's a whole VXLAN and quick encryption and encapsulation that's going on to manage those tunnels. But it's no different than it was with CapWAP. It just does its thing. And lastly, on the wireless front, we purchased a company a few years ago that brought the ultra reliable wireless backhaul, otherwise known as CURB, into the portfolio. That was a separate offering for the longest time since the acquisition of Fluid Mesh, and now we are building that technology into all our access points. So in the case where we need to do AP meshing, in the case where we need to do super reliable handoffs between access points for clients, we can do that now. So one of the biggest use cases I've seen for this lately is autonomous vehicles in fulfillment centers or warehouses, right? Where we need that connectivity to very seamlessly roam between cells within that building. We can now accomplish that at a much more reliable way using ultra reliable wireless backhaul. And then again, couldn't cover every networking update that we have, but feel free to go back to CiscoLive.com. The sessions are all recorded. All of the, some of those sessions are an hour long just on a particular topic, so I could not do half of these justice in a few minutes here. But again, feel free to explore on your own. So, are there any questions?
I'm looking at the chat. I don't see any, or it's just not working. I never know.
One of the features I thought was pretty cool, Jamie, that you were talking about was the ability to turn off power supplies when you're doing power stacking, right? I don't think we give it enough.
Why?
I don't think that we give it enough credence that reducing power usage in data centers is important, right? We continue to hear that, especially in the region and in the area that most of us live in, Philly, Jersey, right? There's an enormous amount of new data center infrastructure being built literally right in my backyard. But reducing the power consumption in your organization, I think, is really important. And I think there's a couple of ways we can do it, right? First of all, with that feature, turning off power supplies that are not in use, because why waste power if we don't need to, right? Another feature that I think is pretty cool in some of the existing Cat 9Ks and also in these is the ability to turn off the LEDs on your switches, right? You walk into a wiring closet and we have dark data centers, right? The lights in the data centers are off. The lights in our wiring closets are off. All you see are LEDs, right? Turn those off, save power. And the fact that, that this functionality is there in the 9300s, I just think is really cool.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out. I did not mention the LEDs being able to be turned off too. And I kind of dismissed that at one point, like, how much LEDs don't draw that much power, but if you multiply it across multiple IDFs in a building, that's a lot of LEDs.
Sure. Every watt counts, right? Yeah. Every watt counts. I mean, I'm guilty. I'm regularly being told to turn off lights in my house. I'm trying to get better about it. But if we can save power, right? Why waste power? You want to, and one of the awesome features too about that is if you turn those LEDs off and you walk into the wiring closet and you really need to see what is occurring and those LEDs are going to help, you just press the status button and they turn on for 10 minutes, right? You're able to do what you need to do. You're able to see which ones are blinking yellow, hopefully none. And then they right, and then they go out again, right? So it's a pretty awesome feature and one that I'm glad that is still there.
Definitely.
Fred said 3 power supplies on a C9350.
That's correct. Up to 3.
Yeah. I saw that.
So technically, with that power stack, you can power a switch with no power supplies using power stack if you so choose.
Yeah.
I mean, probably not recommended, but you can. If the power supply dies on one of those switches, or all the power supplies die, and you have excess capacity across that stack, you can power that switch.
Yeah, it's probably a resilience thing, right? More power supply. You don't necessarily need the 3 power supplies to power 90 watts across 48 switch ports. But if more than one power supply goes down, or maybe a whole side goes down because you've got an A side power and a B side power, you're able to compensate due to those extra power supplies.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I think one of the most exciting things for me is just seeing Cisco focus less on boxes and more on like real world scenarios and outputs. I think that's like interesting, and I love the campus gateway too. I think that's a huge one for me. I just like the way it works and the layer 2 like roaming and being able to authenticate once and reduce so much of that network traffic and just like kind of walk around. I know that was always a big thing for me when I was like on calls or testing something, walking around with a laptop. It's a silly one, but it adds up.
Yeah, that's a good call. I didn't bring that up, but yeah, I mean, it does create that singular source of authentication, similar to how the on-prem controllers are, right? That those on-prem controllers become that singular source of authentication against whatever radius source you're using, right? Whereas if you're using a distributed environment, each one of those access points is a source of authentication that has to be managed. So it simplifies that greatly.
Yeah, especially if you're like a lot of sites have like 2 major sites, like an HQ and then another location that's really big, and that's where like 80% of their wireless users are. And then maybe they have like 10 other buildings. Like those 10 other buildings probably don't need one, but being able to have that layer 3 gateway like in that facility is a big one, and then still having that dashboard. Like so it kind of gets you there. We did have a question about the ring topology. So they said no more ring topology for stack. Is it different cables?
Different cables, yes. No more ring topology for stack. The cables are now keyed, so you can't put them in upside down. Thank you, product management. But yes, the stacking is fully flexible, so you do not have to maintain a full ring topology, nor will you lose half of your backplane bandwidth if you lose part of that ring, right? Historically, if you lost the ring, you lost half your backplane. Now it's a full forwarding backplane using that VXLAN standards-based technology that again you don't have to worry about, but it's there.
Yeah. And I will say that for all those who are still on, there's still about 25 people on, like this is also your session. A lot of times the way that these sessions are generated is just like kind of us talking, trying to figure out like what makes sense, what should we bring up, what are we seeing, what's the trends that we're seeing in the PA region, and New Jersey, some New Jersey. But what like trends are we seeing? What's helpful? So if there's anything that you would like us to cover or cover again, we always can. We do want to make sure that it is somewhat technical. I understand that there is a lot of value to just keeping it high level, but I think that there's so many other forums for that where what we try to do is make it technical, but we're not really certain as how far you want to go on which topic. So if you haven't seen, we have the YouTube, all the sessions we've had previously are uploaded on YouTube. So we've done like a deep dive on SASE. We walked through every single flow. So that was like a really good one. We had one about building AI ready data centers. So there's still a lot of other stuff to think about. There's a session that me and Josh are working on, so we'll see what happens there. I know Zach has a session coming up, and I think Tim, you said that you wanted to do a session as well.
I'd love to, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if there's any topic you want us to go into, let us know. But other than that, we'll continue to try to make them applicable to the real world. If nobody else has anything, well, we can close it out. Oh, we got one more. Would like to hear how the Thousand Eyes and Splunk troubleshooting works more, and I think that's in the AI canvas. Does Thousand Eyes pull info from Splunk about the network devices and the flow, or is that happening another way?
Good question. I believe that's happening all through the integration in AI Canvas, right? Be able to have the AI assistant look at multiple sources of that data to say, hey, I see this client having this issue, and relate that client to something that's happening in one of the other platforms.
And it's all API.
That's something we can certainly deep dive on further, I think, probably later in the fall, winter timeframe.
An AI canvas session.
AI Canvas specific, yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else? We still have quite a few people here. Don't be shy.
Just if we're going to, I know there was some questions about the stacking, and the stacking, I'm not as familiar with it maybe as Jamie is, or you guys. I know with the original 9300s, right, the stack ring was 480 gigabit. Stack ring on the 9300X models was 1 terabit, and you were able to interrupt between those two. You downgrade, right? You'd go, if you had 9300Xs and 9300s, you'd downgrade the stack ring to 480. I kind of doubt, but I don't know for sure, but I doubt there's compatibility with stacking between the 9350s and the 9300s due to the topology differences.
Yeah, you're correct.
And what about the speeds? Do we know what the speeds are for the 9350 stack ring?
1.6 terabits per second.
Okay, cool. And up to 12 members. Like, wow.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And since we're talking about numbers there, power stack is still 4 switches in a power stack.
I was just going to ask.
3 sets of four switches. Yeah, and I'll also mention that the current gen 9300s are not going anywhere. They've not been announced end of sale. I've been told they have not been planned to be announced end of sale. So they are still perfectly viable products.
When are we going to be able to buy these, Jamie? Do you know?
These should ship in the next month or so.
Okay, so first customer ship is really close or has already occurred.
Yeah, FCS I believe is in September, just shortly after the orderability date.
Okay, good. Yeah, so right around the corner.
Yeah, same thing with the routers, by the way.
One thing I've noticed, so when we went from the ASR and ISR to the Cat 80 to the Catalyst 8000, right? Those routers picked up the Catalyst name. Now that we're going from the Catalyst 9000 switches and the Catalyst 8000 series routers, we're moving to a C9350 and a Cisco 8000. It appears as if the product line might be starting to move away. Actually, and I don't know about the access points, but it appears as if we may be moving away from the Catalyst name. Is that something that you see as well, or?
I believe that is the implication.
Yeah. Cool. It's just another observation, and this is kind of where things are going, and maybe that goes along with the merging of the product lines that you were talking about earlier.
And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to, is we now have a singular platform for routing, switching, and wireless.
And it's a Cisco platform.
Correct.
Yeah, I was about to just talk about Cisco for a second. I think that's what's tough about Cisco is like you have to have that air gap option no matter what. We have such a huge federal, and there's so many other use cases too that where they need that on-prem infrastructure. So it's important that we never get away from that. But at the same time, this also fits the other like small, medium, large, like having that cloud management, especially with what we see in manufacturing and what we see with a lot of our customers here is that they're not huge, but they're extremely geo-dispersed. So they have locations in California, South America, Europe, and they're managing so much, and they have like 10 people. So like it's good to see that like cloud option there, but also that we have brownfield because like originally before we rewrote that, and everybody had to like reformat a switch. If you have 300 switches out there, like there's no brownfield approach. Like you're only thinking about greenfield. But now that we rewrote the code and like with an upgrade, a couple commands, now you can have at least the monitoring in dashboard. I think that's realistic. So it's good to like touch grass, but it's a good option. Cool. Thanks, Jamie. Until next time, I think that the next session is going to be August 22nd because we do not want to interfere. Is that the correct date, Josh? It's the week before Labor Day because we usually do this on the last Friday, but it's going to be a week before Labor Day, whatever date that is.
Yeah, that should be the 22nd, Eric. At
Okay,
11.
cool.
Yep.
Cool. So I'll see y'all then. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.
Everybody.
Thanks.